Most founders think they can't afford A players, when the truth is you can't afford not to have A player talent on your team. Bill Gates once said that one A player could do the work of 50 B and C players. Underpaying your team attracts mediocre talent and leads to missed growth, constant turnover, and you as the founder having to waste your time and energy jumping in to compensate for an underperforming team member. On the flip side, overpaying without structure and without strategy is going to kill your profit margins and make it impossible to scale. So in this video, I want to talk about how to creatively design compensation plans that attracts and retains A player talent without killing your profit margin. So how do we do this? The first thing we need to understand is, how do A players think? A players know they are A players. They know that they can step into the right business and drive massive value. They aren't afraid of a challenge, and they aren't afraid to bet on themselves because they know that they can deliver. So knowing that about the A players that we want to attract, how do we design a compensation plan that rewards them based off of the value that they know they can bring? Basically, this is going to be a compensation plan that combines two pieces. For most roles, with the exception of maybe sales, every role is going to have some sort of base salary. The base salary is there to represent the fair compensation for the time that they're putting in, for the value of the role. It also creates stability and security, which for many people is really, really important to them. So we've got a core base salary. For our A players, on top of that, we are going to layer what we would call performance-based compensation, meaning there is an additional amount of money that they could make every single year based off of performance. For a B or C player, they don't like that structure because they don't have confidence in their own performance. But for an A player, they would rather have a larger but variable compensation plan because they have confidence that they can come in and they can deliver. So they're not afraid to put their money where their mouth is and say, I will make more money, but only if I deliver on the promised outcomes. And that word outcomes is the key word here. We need to attach performance to specific outcomes that represent an A player in this role, which means that we, the founder, need to have clarity around what are the outcomes that we expect an A player to be able to walk into this role and to hit. We need to have that. We need to have that clarity and that certainty so we can build a compensation plan around it. If we don't know what outcomes to assign to this role, if we don't know what are reasonable or fair targets to attach to those outcomes, then we run the risk of setting outcomes that are unrealistic, that no one is ever going to hit, and then we don't pay our top talent enough and they leave, or we lowball them and we end up shelling out a ton of money because we didn't set the bar high enough. So this is part of the research, this is part of the work that we have to do as founders before we design a compensation plan and try and hire an A player, is that we need to understand what are reasonable outcomes for this role. Our clients have this question all the time. So to help them do this, we actually created a series of what we call job scorecards. Job scorecards are the tool that you need to use to define the outcomes for these key roles that you are hiring in. And for most of our clients, that's their leadership team. So we created a set of templates that has a different job scorecard for each key leadership role: head of marketing, sales, product, client success, operations. You can actually grab those templates. I've made them available. They're in the description. They're entirely free. And it's just there to get you started when it comes to defining a clear set of outcomes that you can then use to pay your top talent fairly. So if you want a starting point, drop down to the description, grab that link. It's totally free, and it's going to get you the 80-20 of the way there. Okay, so we are clear now that we've got our base salary, we've got performance-based comp, and we're attaching that compensation to specific outcomes that are relevant to that role. A couple of best practices around this. Number one, the performance-based side of the pay structure should not exceed 40%, meaning someone could earn up to generally between 20 to 40% of their total earning potential from the performance side of their compensation. So we still want the base salary to represent the majority of where their earning is coming from. And then the performance is this additional performance incentive on top of that. But what's great about that is what that means is that if they don't perform, you don't pay. So you can afford to spend more and give more on the performance side of this because you only have to pay out for value once it's been created. So let's take the example of a head of marketing role. If we're attaching their compensation to cost per acquisition or gross profit, that means that your head of marketing has to deliver on that outcome first before you pay for it. So they've already created the value, they've already created the profit, they've already gotten you all of those leads within KPI before you pay them for it. What it means is that we as a founder can confidently pay our top performers a bunch of money because we know that we will only ever pay them a fraction of the money that they are bringing into the business. We are paying them out of money that they've created. And if they're not creating more additional money because of their skills and expertise in the role, we don't pay them out. And so it reduces our risk of paying out top dollar for somebody who doesn't ultimately perform. Okay, now here's the caveat. This is the single biggest mistake that I see founders make when they try and build performance-based compensation plans, which is that we don't future pace them. So let me tell you a quick story. The very first marketing agency where I was the COO at this company, I saw these two co-founders hire in their very first closer. They had to figure out how to pay this guy enough to bring him in, when in reality, they just didn't have that many leads yet because they were a really new company. So what they settled on is, hey, we're gonna pay you 30% lifetime commission for all of the deals that you bring in. You know where this is going. The company did well, started to scale. They did their first, 50K month. The founders were each paying themselves $3K a month, and their closer made $16K that month. In the moment, when they were a smaller company, didn't have the leads, needed to figure out how to bring this person in, they were like, cool, yeah, we'll just pay you $1 out of every $3 that you make us. Perfect, makes perfect sense. But what they failed to do was stress test, future pace, what that compensation would become at scale. They were building a compensation plan for 5 leads a week. What happened when they 4x'd and had 20 leads a week, but hadn't anticipated what that would do to their closers' pay? So the number one best practice that I can offer you if you're going to play with performance-based compensation is you need to future pace that compensation plan, and you need to try and break it. Meaning, imagine a future version of your business. Imagine the best month that you can possibly fathom for a future version of your business in the next 1 to 2 years. Most number of leads, most number of sales, highest lifetime value, whatever metric you're attaching performance to, imagine the best possible result that this A player could generate in that part of the business. And then run the numbers. Under my proposed compensation plan, in the absolute best case scenario, how much am I on the hook to pay them? And am I willing to pay them that much money? Because what you don't want to do, and what these co-founders had to do, is they realized their mistake and then they had to negotiate their closer down. They essentially had to say, hey, take a pay cut for the same amount of work. How do you think that went? So to avoid putting ourselves in a situation where we would accidentally demoralize or demote our top talent because we made the mistake of overpromising from the beginning, we need to future pace our compensation. We need to try and break our compensation against the best case scenario and, on the flip side, the worst case scenario. In the worst case scenario, am I still paying this person enough for them to eat, for them to feed their family, for them to not quit? So by stress testing the limits of our compensation plan in a hypothetical future version of our business, we not only ensure that we're able to attract top talent today, but we are also building for the future and building a plan that is going to scale fairly without destroying the profit margins of our business at scale. So here's the sneaky part, is sometimes we can design incredible A-player compensation plans and then still accidentally attract and hire B and C level talent. What do we do when the people that we have brought in, or the people who have been in our company the longest, start to underperform in key leadership roles? I've created an entire video and an entire tool walking you through this scenario because it is the most common problem that we see for our clients as they start to grow and scale towards 8 and multi-8 figures. So if you are currently dealing with underperformers in key roles, go ahead, check out that next video. It's going to walk you through exactly how to use the same tool that I gave you today once you've brought these people in, and how to manage them up to meet the outcomes that you've set, or manage them out and off the bus if they are unable or unwilling to do so. So if your problem is getting B and C players out of there, Go ahead, check out that video, and I will see you over there.